US Special Forces need to train for Atlantic side jungle warfare operations, they don't fly to Florida's swamps or the forests of North Carolina. They go to Lamego, Portugal, to a military unit that spent 14 years fighting in the African bush and still trains Delta Force operators today in close-quarters forest combat and unconventional warfare tactics that can't be replicated anywhere else in NATO. This is Portugal's Centro de Tropas Comandos, a unit most people have never heard of, but that America's most elite soldiers consider essential partners. Here's why a country of 10 million people maintains special operations forces that punch well above their weight, and why the Pentagon keeps coming back. Centro de Tropas Comandos, forged in Africa's longest wars. The Centro de Tropas Comandos, CC for short, was founded in 1962 during Portugal's colonial wars in Africa. At that time, Portugal was fighting 3 simultaneous insurgencies across Angola, Mozambique, and Guinea-Bissau against independence movements that would eventually succeed after 14 years of brutal jungle and bush warfare. The Portuguese army needed specialized units capable of long-range reconnaissance, ambush operations, counterinsurgency, and survival in hostile tropical environments where conventional infantry units struggled. The CTC was built to meet that need, and its doctrine, training, and operational culture were forged in combat conditions that lasted longer than America's involvement in Vietnam. Portuguese commandos conducted deep penetration patrols lasting weeks in environments where resupply was difficult, medical evacuation often impossible, and the enemy had intimate knowledge of terrain they'd lived in for generations. The skills developed during this period, tracking, fieldcraft, operating in small teams without external support, adapting to fluid tactical situations, became the foundation of Portuguese commando identity. Most European special operations forces train primarily for counterterrorism, direct action raids in urban or desert environments, and operations alongside conventional forces with robust logistics support. Portuguese commandos certainly train for those missions, but they also maintain proficiency in operations where you can't call for helicopter extraction, where resupply might not come for weeks, and where the environment itself is as dangerous as the enemy. That expertise is why American Special Operations units continue seeking training opportunities with the CC decades after Portugal's colonial wars ended. Tropas Especiais, Portugal's Army Special Forces. Portugal's Tropas Especiais, identifiable by their distinctive green berets, represent the Army's dedicated Special Forces unit, separate from the CC Commandos. Founded in 1979 after Portugal's transition to democracy and the end of the colonial wars, Tropas Especiais were modelled partially on US Army Special Forces and British SAS, with mission sets focused on unconventional warfare, foreign internal defence, special reconnaissance, and direct action. While CTC commandos maintain a broader light infantry special operations role comparable to US Army Rangers, Tropas Especiais operate more like US Army Special Forces Green Berets, with emphasis on language skills, cultural training, working by, with and through indigenous forces, and intelligence collection in denied areas. The distinction matters because it reflects Portugal's recognition that modern special operations require both direct action capability and the ability to operate in politically sensitive environments where overt military presence isn't feasible. Tropas Especiais selection and training emphasizes language proficiency, particularly in Portuguese-speaking African and South American countries where Portugal maintains historical and cultural ties. Operators often deploy to former Portuguese colonies in Africa where they conduct training missions with local militaries, intelligence gathering, and relationship building that provides Portugal and NATO with access and influence that wouldn't exist otherwise. The unit conducts regular exchanges with US Special Forces groups, participating in Joint Combined Exchange Training, SET, programs where American and Portuguese special operators conduct mutual training, share tactics and techniques, and build interoperability that pays dividends during multinational operations. These aren't ceremonial exercises, but substantive training rotations where both sides bring expertise the other values. American operators learn Portuguese approaches to operating in austere environments with minimal support, while Portuguese forces gain exposure to American technology, logistics systems, and operational planning methods. DEI, Portugal's Naval Special Operations Force. The Destacamento de Especiais, DEI, represents Portugal's maritime special operations capability, roughly equivalent to US Navy SEALs and mission set, though far smaller in numbers. Estimated at around 80 operators, DEI conducts maritime counterterrorism, shipboarding and seizure, underwater demolition, hydrographic reconnaissance, and special reconnaissance operations in maritime and riverine environments. DEI operators are trained as combat frogmen, capable of closed-circuit rebreather diving, underwater navigation, and covert insertion from submarines or surface vessels. The unit's primary missions include protecting Portuguese maritime interests, conducting counter-terrorism operations against ships or offshore platforms, and providing specialized capabilities during hostage rescue or crisis response situations where water is the operating environment. Portugal's extensive coastline, territorial waters around the Azores and Madeira, and historical maritime focus make naval special operations a strategic priority despite the country's relatively small defense budget. DEI provides capabilities that allow Portugal to protect its exclusive economic zone, respond to maritime security threats, and contribute specialized skills to NATO maritime operations in the Mediterranean and Atlantic. The unit trains regularly with US Navy Special Warfare Units, Spanish Naval Special Operations, and other NATO maritime SOF, participating in exercises that rehearse ship seizure, oil platform security, underwater demolition, and maritime counter-terrorism scenarios. These exercises aren't just about interoperability, but about maintaining proficiency in high-risk, technically demanding operations where small mistakes have fatal consequences. DEI's small size means it operates more like a tight-knit team than a large military unit, with selection and training standards that produce attrition rates comparable to US Navy SEAL training. The unit maintains a low public profile, rarely appears in media, and conducts most of its operations without public acknowledgement, which is standard practice for Tier 1 maritime units worldwide. Joint training with US Special Operations Forces. The relationship between Portuguese Special Operations Forces and US counterparts goes deeper than occasional joint exercises or ceremonial exchanges. Portuguese units, particularly the CTC, host regular training rotations with Delta Force operators who come to Portugal specifically to train in environments and scenarios that aren't easily replicated in the United States. The Joint Combined Exchange Training Program facilitates these rotations, with American Special Mission Units sending personnel to train alongside Portuguese commandos in Lamego's forests and mountain terrain. The focus is often on close-quarters battle in forested environments, tracking, counter-tracking, camouflage and concealment in vegetation, and small unit tactics in terrain where visibility is measured in meters rather than kilometers. Delta Force values this training because it addresses operational requirements that don't fit neatly into urban counterterrorism or desert warfare paradigms. Operations in Central Africa, South America, Southeast Asia, and other regions where forests and jungles define the battlefield require different skills than kicking doors in Baghdad or conducting raids in Afghan compounds. Portuguese commandos bring institutional knowledge from years of combat in exactly those environments, and American operators recognize that expertise is worth traveling to Portugal to access. US Marine Corps Force Reconnaissance Units also conduct exchanges with Portuguese Special Operations Forces, focusing on amphibious operations, long-range reconnaissance, and forward observer skills. These exchanges benefit both sides, with Marines bringing advanced communications and fire support coordination capabilities, while Portuguese forces contribute expertise in operating in austere conditions with minimal support. The regularity of these exchanges, not one-off events but recurring rotations built into annual training calendars, indicates they're considered operationally valuable rather than diplomatic gestures. Units don't send their most experienced operators overseas for weeks at a time unless the training provides capabilities that justify the time and expense. Recent operational deployments A&D combat experience. Portuguese Special Operations Forces deployed to Iraq between 2003 and 2009, conducting convoy security, training Iraqi security forces, and providing force protection for Portuguese and allied personnel. These weren't frontline combat deployments in the same sense as US forces experienced, but they involved regular contact with insurgents, eyed threats, and the full spectrum of counterinsurgency challenges that defined the Iraq War. In Afghanistan, Portuguese forces participated in ISAF, the International Security Assistance Force, from 2008 through 2014. Portuguese Army Commandos and Special Forces conducted training missions with Afghan National Army units, provided security for reconstruction teams, and participated in counterinsurgency operations alongside US and NATO forces. The deployment gave Portuguese operators combat experience in a conventional counterinsurgency environment and built professional relationships with American and European counterparts that continue today. More recently, Portuguese Special Operations Forces have deployed to Mali as part of MINUSMA, the United Nations peacekeeping mission in one of the world's most dangerous operating environments. Mali's northern regions face persistent threats from jihadist groups affiliated with Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State, and UN peacekeepers operate in an environment where ambushes, eyed attacks, and complex attacks on bases occur regularly. Portuguese forces have also contributed to MINUSCA, the UN mission in the Central African Republic, where they conduct training, provide security, and help stabilize a country plagued by militia violence and weak government control. These deployments keep Portuguese special operators engaged in real-world missions, maintain combat readiness, and provide operational experience that can't be replicated in training exercises. The significance of these African deployments extends beyond individual operator experience. Portugal's historical ties to former colonies give Portuguese forces cultural and linguistic advantages in African operating environments that other NATO countries lack. Portuguese operators can communicate directly with local populations and security forces without interpreters, understand cultural dynamics that shape local conflicts, and leverage relationships built over decades of engagement. The brutal selection process that produces Portuguese commandos. The path to becoming a Portuguese commando begins with the Curso de Commandos, a 16-week selection and training course that breaks approximately 70% of candidates who attempt it. This attrition rate is comparable to US Army Ranger School and reflects the physical and psychological demands required to join Portugal's elite units. The course combines physical conditioning, weapons training, small unit tactics, survival skills, land navigation, and stress inoculation designed to identify candidates who can function effectively under conditions of extreme fatigue, hunger, and psychological pressure. Sleep deprivation, forced marches carrying heavy loads, cold water immersion, and constant evaluation by instructors create an environment where quitting becomes the easier option for most candidates. Why the United States keeps coming back to Portugal. Portugal is a country of 10 million people with a defense budget that wouldn't fund US military operations for a single month. By conventional metrics, population, GDP, defense spending, Portugal shouldn't have special operations forces that warrant serious attention from the Pentagon. But Portugal maintains capabilities that are genuinely unique within NATO, and the United States recognizes that value. The fresh institutional memory of African jungle warfare maintained through deployments to Mali and Central African Republic gives Portuguese units expertise that can't be found elsewhere in the alliance. No other NATO country fought sustained counterinsurgency campaigns in tropical forests for 14 years, and that experience shaped doctrine, training, and organizational culture in ways that persist decades later. The terrain around Lamego provides training environments that approximate operational conditions in Africa and South America better than anything available in the United States or most of Europe. When Delta Force operators want to rehearse operations in forested environments against an intelligent, well-trained opposing force that knows the terrain intimately, Lamego offers that capability. Portugal's linguistic and cultural ties to former colonies in Africa and South America give Portuguese forces access and credibility in regions where American military presence faces political constraints. Joint operations that include Portuguese participation can operate in environments where US-only missions would generate political backlash or require diplomatic negotiations that delay response times. The relationship is mutually beneficial in ways that extend beyond tactical training. Portugal gains access to American technology, intelligence, logistics expertise, and operational experience in theaters where Portuguese forces haven't deployed. The United States gains a reliable NATO partner with specialized capabilities, regional expertise, and willingness to contribute forces to multinational operations even when domestic political support is uncertain. Portugal's position as the only NATO country with current, relevant African jungle warfare doctrine matters in a strategic environment where African instability, jihadist groups in the Sahel, and resource competition involving China and Russia make the continent increasingly important. The United States needs partners who can operate effectively in African environments, and Portugal offers that capability backed by historical relationships and cultural competence that can't be improvised. Tiny country, Tier 1 capability, and the only NATO unit that still teaches jungle warfare based on 14 years of combat experience rather than theoretical doctrine. That's why US Special Forces still fly to Lamego, why Delta Force operators train in Portuguese forests, and why a nation of 10 million people maintains special operations forces that America's most elite soldiers consider essential partners worth learning from.